CNN correspondent Awa Damon has managed to reach the besieged Syrian city of Homs. She joins us now live with more on the situation there. And our opposition groups say the city of Homs has now been under the most sustained heavy artillery bombardment in days. Dozens have been killed. Smoke has been rising over the city. What can you tell us about the situation right now?
Well, that smoke you're seeing rising is from an oil pipeline that is believed to have been hit. What we heard was 3 explosions at around 6:30 in the morning. Shortly thereafter, that thick plume of black smoke began covering the skyline here. This is not the first time that we have seen these types of images emerging from the besieged city of Homs. That pipeline has been hit on at least 2 other occasions. Following that, at around 7:30 in the morning, began the sustained bombardment. Various sounds of artillery being fired, impacting here, as well as sporadic heavy automatic machine gun fire has been heard. And this has been the status quo in Homs for over a week now. The Syrian military has really intensified its offensive here, especially in the neighborhood of Baba Amrou. Activists are telling us that they believe that the Syrian government is on a campaign to flatten every single neighborhood where there has been some sort of opposition, some sort of effort to try to stand up to this government. And just to give you an idea of how intense the bombardment has been, yesterday morning, activists were saying that they counted around 55 explosions in just the span of 15 minutes, and they say that that has been the norm. And you can only imagine the type of pressure that they have been under, especially when it comes to trying to deal with the number of dead and the number of wounded. In many parts of the city, they've been unable to get medical supplies in, and in these makeshift clinics that they have set up, they're unable to adequately treat the wounded because of a lack of medical supplies and because they only have the most basic medical equipment at their disposal. There has been an intensified effort on the part of the activists here to try to find various routes in and out of these besieged neighborhoods to get medical supplies in and to get the wounded out, many of them who require much greater treatment than what the people are able to provide them at these clinics, John.
Our 55 explosions in 15 minutes works out to be almost 4 per minute on average. But just tell us a little bit more about this city. There's about 1 million people who live there. There are women and children. Is there anywhere safe in Homs right now?
Well, there are some areas that we've been hearing people have been fleeing to from the various other parts of the city that are coming under heavy bombardment, and they've effectively been living 4, 5, 6, 7 families to a house in areas that they're not able to get out of, bearing in mind that a lot of these areas that the Syrian government is hitting are in fact the poorer parts of the city. Baba Amrou, for example, is one of the most impoverished areas, the most impoverished neighborhoods inside the city of Homs, and their families are gathering in makeshift shelters that are effectively the basements of some houses. Most houses here actually don't have basements, but the few that do have become makeshift shelters where dozens of families are gathering along with their children. These are families who either are unable to get out or because they don't have the means to, or they don't have relatives in other parts of the city, in other areas in Syria, are being effectively forced to try and stay put. But even when families do try to flee, activists are telling us they do often come under attack. There's of course, a great problem we've been hearing about, reported throughout, that snipers are stationed on just about every single building, making any sort of escape route an extreme challenge. There have been a number of instances that activists have been telling us about where people just crossing the street, women, children are being sniped at as well. There was video that emerged yesterday or the day before that showed a shell that is said to have fallen on top of a vehicle. Inside that vehicle, at least 3 members of one family said to have perished. So you can just imagine the situation people are under, not just from a danger standpoint, but also the psychological impact that this is having on these families, these civilians that are stuck in these areas, unable to get out, unable to get to safe ground, and of course unable to receive adequate medical treatment should they in fact be injured in these attacks.
And we know the death toll is mounting there. And without sounding too grim, it is a grim situation, but what do they do with the bodies?
You know, John, in many instances, they have to bury them under cover of darkness, or they have to bury them in makeshift graves. There have been a few cases where they've even tried to go out to bury the bodies of the dead in the various graveyards under cover of darkness, and even in those instances, people say they've come under fire. And what's even more disturbing is that the activists say that since this most recent campaign began in Homs more than 10 days ago, they believe that hundreds have been killed. They don't have an accurate death toll, though, and that is because they still believe that a countless number of bodies are buried under the rubble. There are a number of buildings that have come crumbling down because of the artillery bombardment, where activists believe there were families inside. In some cases, it's their relatives, their friends. They have not heard from them in days. They believe that they're still buried under the rubble, but they quite simply are unable to reach these areas. Movement in many parts of the city, especially those that are coming under this intense bombardment during the day, is just about impossible. It's virtually a suicide run to try to move around for many people, so they have to proceed naturally with extreme caution. So it's very difficult to really, at this point in time, gauge the magnitude, the human death toll of this most recent escalation in violence. And even now, we still continue to hear the ongoing sound of machine gun fire and of artillery bombardment. And again, this has been the status quo in Homs for more than 10 days now, and that is just a result of the most recent military crackdown, not to mention that for months now, many parts of the city have been under siege, and the death toll, as you say, continues to rise. And that is exactly why so many of the activists here are so desperate, trying to reach out to the international community, yet unable to comprehend how it is in the 21st century, as they were telling us just a few hours ago, that this type of an onslaught can be taking place in full view of the international community, of global powers, of various humanitarian agencies, and yet no concrete action has been really taken to try to bring about a true end to the violence here, John.
Okay, Our Damon there with our first independent, first-hand account look at exactly what is going on inside the besieged city of Homs.